The Tao of Self-Confidence, Episode 107. Welcome to the Tao of Self-Confidence, where I share stories of outstanding women finding their inner journey to self-confidence 5 days a week. Visit our website at thetaoofselfconfidence.com to check out amazing blog articles and our killer resources. Well, hello, friend. Welcome to the Tao of Self-Confidence, where I share stories of amazing women who have discovered their inner journey to self-confidence. I'm your host today, Sheena Yap-Chan, and today I have a special lady on today. She is from Colorado. I met her, for the first time in Chicago. She was the sweetest lady that I've ever met. She was just very open, very nice, very kind, and I knew I had to have her on the show. So, she's an online entrepreneur, business strategist, a passion and blogging expert. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Amy Starr Allen. Amy, how are you doing today? Maybe you can fill in a little bit more about yourself to our listeners.
I'm doing great, Sheena. Thanks for having me. And yeah, I remember the day that I met you. That was awesome. Yeah, I remember it well. And so, yeah, like you said, I'm an online entrepreneur. My biggest passion in life, I feel like my purpose in life is to really help people to connect with their true purpose and passion so that they too can, if they want to have a home-based business, or blogging is a big passion of mine, to show people how you can actually get paid to do what you love. And so that's my primary focus in my business, is to help people to be able to do that.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that, Amy. And what is your cultural background?
So I'm a Jersey girl. I was born and raised in New Jersey, and I've kind of moved all over the place. I've, have a curious personality. So I've enjoyed living in a lot of different parts of the country. I also lived in New Zealand for 6 months, but New Jersey is my upbringing. So I'll always be a Jersey girl at heart. My heritage is Irish, German, Scottish, and Swiss. Yeah, I've just kind of been moving around the country. So part of the reason that I like to do that, people used to ask me, if you're curious about a place, why don't you just go on vacation? And I always say, I like to experience different cultures. So as far as my cultural background, it's kind of a mix of a lot of different things. I feel like the best way to learn about a culture is to live in a place for a while and make friends there and really get to know what it's like. So
awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. And I also believe in living in different places, right? Just, it helps you learn more about yourself too and what you're capable of. So that's pretty awesome. And what would be your favorite self-confidence quote?
Yeah, that's a tough question because there's so many good ones. But, for me, self-confidence really comes down to being able to trust your intuition. So one of my favorites is by Marilyn Monroe. She says, "A woman knows by intuition or instinct what is best for herself." And I truly, truly believe that and live by that. Another self-confidence quote that I really like is by Dalai Lama. And it's, "With realization of one's own potential and self-confidence in one's ability, one can build a better world." And that one really speaks to me as well, because I do truly believe that if human beings would be willing to trust in themselves, that anything's possible. We can really make a difference in the world if we're willing to trust.
I love that quote by the Dalai Lama, and it's so true, right? Especially for women. I think women find it hard to believe in themselves that they're capable of creating the life that they want. So I think this quote is, really great, because when people can just realize that they can do these things, I mean, anything's just possible. So I really love that quote. And, in your own words, how would you define self-confidence?
Yeah, well, like I was just saying, I believe that self-confidence, what it really comes down to is our ability to listen and to trust our own intuition. And when we start to learn how to do that and truly trust in this inner guidance that we have, that's when our true self-confidence kicks in, because we get to go through life knowing that everything is handled, that the universe has our back, and we're then willing to give up trust, not give up trust, give up control, and just truly trust that we know what to do. We'll know what to do when we trust. And so I know I'm kind of all over the place on that, but really what it comes down to for me is self-confidence is directly has to do with your ability to trust your intuition.
Well, thanks for sharing that. And I also believe in trusting your intuition. I know I had a lot of challenges with that, trusting my own intuition, because, all our life, it's like we've been told what to do. And, it's just hard to sometimes follow what you feel or what you think is right. So, I think that's a great definition. And, what was your life like before your discovery of self-confidence?
Well, before I really understood this concept, I really was going through life always having a backup plan. Like, I never actually believed that what I wanted was truly possible. So I would set goals like, by the time I'm this age, if this hasn't happened yet, I'm going to do this kind of thing. And, so I was never confident that I could actually have what I wanted. I didn't expect what I wanted to happen. Instead, I was always creating a backup plan so that in the case that what I actually wanted didn't happen, I would have something to fall back on. So basically what I was doing was I was expecting to not have what I wanted. And that's exactly what was happening.
It's funny because I used to know someone who would always plan for the worst things. And, every time you do those things, you're just expecting, like you said, you just expected your plan B. My friend just always expected the worst. So he always got the worst, right? And it's amazing when you can just switch that, that energy to just stick to the plan that you want, or, expect the best, and the things will start attracting to you. So, what was your aha moment when you realized, you can achieve the goals that you really want versus your plan B?
Yeah. So, this is kind of, a lot of things happened. I mentioned that I had spent some time in New Zealand, and, that taking that trip to New Zealand was my first big, real leap of faith, where I really just went, trusted my intuition. Basically, the way that trip happened was that I kept having this recurring dream that I needed to go to New Zealand for 6 months. And I had no idea why. At the time, I had a really good thing going. I was living back on the East Coast. I had a nice house. I had a great job. I had a new car. I had, everything was going well. And I kept having this dream that I needed to go to New Zealand for 6 months. And I just couldn't, I had no idea why. I didn't know anybody in New Zealand. I didn't really know anything about New Zealand. But I just kept having the dream. And so finally, I just said, I need to just go with this. There's a reason why this is happening. And so I went ahead and booked a trip to New Zealand. And I decided, I'm going to sell everything I own, and I'm just going to go. And I don't know if I'm going to come back. I don't know what's supposed to happen when I go there, but I know that I need to go there for some reason. And it was amazing what happened. So I called a travel agent and I booked this ticket. And, it was it was like a $2,500 ticket or whatever. And so I booked the trip, and then I said, I needed to call back the next day because I had to transfer some money from one account to another to pay for the ticket. And the next day, the day that I was supposed to call and book the ticket was 9/11. I woke up that morning. I was living right outside of New York City at the time. And it was crazy. Anyone remembers where they were on 9/11. I mean, I remember it like it was yesterday. And so it was interesting because I had just planned this trip, and then that happened. And when I finally, I gave it a few days, I called the travel agent back, and I wanted to go ahead and pay for my ticket, and they were trying to talk me out of it. They're like, "You should not be getting on a plane right now. Do you understand what's going on?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm right outside of New York. I understand what's going on, and I want to get out of here. I'm ready to go." And so they sold me the ticket, and then I decided to, I sold everything I owned and decided to drive across the country to Colorado. I was living in New Jersey at the time. I drove across the country to Colorado because my whole family was in Colorado, and I wanted to spend a couple weeks with them before I left because I didn't know if I was going to come back from New Zealand or whatever. So as I was driving, I sold everything I owned except for my car because I was going to sell my car once I got to Colorado, and my car broke down on my trip across the country. And it was just, I'm just giving this as an example. It was one thing after another that a lot of people might have seen as obstacles that, forget it, I'm not going on this trip. Especially the 9/11 thing, a lot of people might have taken that as a sign that they're not supposed to do it. But for me, I was so sure that I needed to go. And these obstacles for me were kind of, I saw them kind of as a test of my commitment, to see if I was really up for this. And so my car broke down, and then it was like one thing after another coming up trying to stop me from going on this trip, and nothing, like I knew that I had to go. Finally, after dealing with all this chaos, I finally, I packed my backpack. I was basically going to New Zealand with just a backpack for six months minimum. And I didn't even know what I was going to do when I got off the plane on the other side. Like I was just going to leave it up to my guidance, the whole thing. And right up until like getting on the plane, my dad took me to the airport. I had said goodbye to all of my friends, my family, and I showed up at the airport with this backpack. And when I went to check in, they told me that I couldn't go because I didn't have the right visa. I didn't have a return ticket, and they weren't going to let me get on the plane. And they said that it was going to take about a week to deal with the paperwork that I needed. And I said, no, I'm getting on the plane today. I've already packed my backpack. I've already said goodbye, and I need to get on the plane today. And they said, well, you're going to need to stop in LA and deal with, go to this office and do this, whatever. And I said, okay, that's fine. And I remember hugging my dad and saying goodbye to him. And the last thing he said to me was, you're in God's hands now. And I thought about that through this whole time that I was in New Zealand, because the whole time I was there, I literally just trusted, and I never really had to make a decision. Like I just felt guided the whole time, even down to not knowing what I was going to do when I got off the plane. Well, I ended up on the plane I went to LA, I dealt with the paperwork and everything. And then when I got on my plane to New Zealand, it was a really long flight. And I was sitting between, in a middle seat. And I met, on one side of me was a woman from Chicago who was a skydiver. And on the other side of me was a man from New Zealand who was going home to visit his mother. And the woman asked me if I wanted to go skydiving with her, which was on my bucket list for things to do while I was there. And he invited us to his mom's house for Sunday roast. So by the time I got off the plane, I already had a plan. I was going with her for a few days, and then we went to his mom's house. And then the rest of the trip, it was like that. I was just guided the whole time without having to decide anything. So it was a really good lesson in really trusting my intuition. So the trip in and of itself was huge, but there was a couple other big aha moments for me that I got from that trip that changed everything for me. One of them was, leading up to that trip, I was a realtor and a bartender. And the amount of money that I made, especially as a bartender, was always directly proportionate to how I looked when I went to work, what I was wearing and how I presented myself. I made more money if I, put some effort into looking good or whatever. And when I went to New Zealand, all I had was a backpack. I had one short sleeve shirt, one long sleeve shirt, a pair of shorts, and a pair of pants. And that's pretty much it. I got there, I got off the plane, I cut off all my hair. I didn't have any makeup. I didn't have anything, like that with me. And what was really amazing to me was, for the first time in my life, I met the most amazing people on this trip. Some of the deepest connections I've ever made with anybody in my life. And what I really learned was that people love me for me, not for how I look. And that was a huge aha moment for me. I can just be truly authentic. I don't have to look a certain way or act a certain way. And when I do that, I attract the most amazing people into my life, the people who love me for me. And the other huge aha moment for me was I met this man who became a spiritual teacher for me. He owned a cafe, off the beaten track, where no tourists go. I learned about it because I was working at this retreat center and somebody told me about it. And I met this man who was amazing. And as I would travel around the country, I would always come back to this cafe, and he would give me some words of wisdom and kind of send me on my way. And this one particular time, we were sitting there talking, and he said to me, we were talking about kids or whatever. And I told him that at the time I was 33. And I said, when I turn 35, if I'm still single, I'm going to get artificially inseminated because I really want to have kids. And he said to me, is that what you want? Or would you rather be in a relationship and have a family? And I said, well, of course, I'd rather be in a relationship and have a family. But if I'm not, by the time I'm 35, I'm going to get artificially inseminated. And he said, you need to get rid of your backup plan and expect what you really want. And it was in that moment that I realized that that's how I had been living, like I was just talking about before, with always having a backup plan. So that was a huge aha moment for me. And when I left, I literally left with this expectation that I was going to meet the right person and have kids. And like, as soon as I got back from New Zealand, I met a man, we were married in 2 months, and I was pregnant. Like, just by expecting what I wanted. So that was a huge piece of my aha as well, to just really, really trust that what I want is possible, and to know that if I give up needing to have control, that the universe has my back and I'll always know what to do.
Amy, those stories were amazing. Like, just you following your intuition, even with the obstacles that you went through, it's crazy, right? Because like you said, most people would just give up. They're like, it's not for me, forget it. They see the first obstacle and they just give up. You kept on going, and you were able to experience, a lot, like being in New Zealand for at least 6 months. And, after those realizations, what's your life like now?
Well, ever since that trip, again, like, I don't know why I needed to go on that trip, but I learned so many powerful life lessons on that trip, which I guess is why. And ever since then, I've just really learned to trust my intuition, to trust that the universe has my back, and to follow my heart no matter what. As a matter of fact, this is kind of a journey in and of itself. It's easy to say I'm going to follow my heart no matter what, but what happens is, and I know this isn't just for myself, which is why I think it's worth mentioning, sometimes following our heart is really, really scary, because sometimes it just doesn't make sense. Like, that trip to New Zealand didn't make sense. People thought I was insane when I was selling all my stuff and like getting on a plane without knowing what I was going to do on the other side. Like, so sometimes following our heart can be really challenging, because either we think it's crazy and we don't understand why we're supposed to do what we're feeling guided to do, or somebody that cares about us is going to try to talk us out of something, or try to talk us into something that's different than what we're kind of the message that we're getting. And so it's actually a very hard thing to do, to follow your heart all the time. And I've been practicing this since that trip, which was quite a while ago. But just in this last year, 1 year ago for New Year's, I made a promise to myself. When I look back over the previous year, which I do every year at the end of the year, I kind of looked back and I looked at like what worked and what didn't work and what I could improve upon for the year going into the new year, which is what I do every year. And what I noticed was every time that I suffered in that previous year was a time when I didn't follow my heart, or I didn't trust my intuition. I let somebody talk me out of something, or I let somebody talk me into something, or I just was too scared to actually go with the guidance that I was getting. Every single time there was suffering involved, it was because of that. So this past year, 2015, I made a promise to myself to follow my heart 100% of the time, no matter how scary it is, no matter what anyone says to me. And I just completed a year of doing that. And it was the most amazing year of my life. A lot of scary stuff, a lot of stuff people would look at and say is crazy, that things that I've walked away from, and things that I've started, and relationships that I've let go, and new relationships that have come into my life, and all this different stuff. But really, to answer your question, the biggest thing that I've learned is to just follow my heart no matter what. And that's where the miracles happen. Because a lot of times, like when I look at everything that's happened, even this, I was telling you that I'm getting ready to move across the country. Like, I didn't see that coming. That came from guidance when I was sitting on the beach over the summer. And for 3 weeks, I was sitting on the beach getting this clear message, like, move to the beach. And now I'm uprooting my family and moving to the beach, and people think I'm nuts because I live in one of the most beautiful places in the world, in Boulder, Colorado. Why would you do that? And it's just learning to just trust that there's a reason that this is the next thing to do. And so anyway, in a nutshell, to answer your question, I've just really learned to trust my intuition and follow my heart no matter what, no matter how scary it is.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Amy. And I know what it feels like to follow your heart, especially I'm the type of person who needs to know why I'm doing these things. And sometimes, we have to just learn to let go, even if it doesn't make sense, right? Mm-hmm. If there's just something there that you have to go after and just figure it out along the way. So, I love what you mentioned about just following your heart, even if it doesn't make sense to you. And, you doing the whole year of just following your heart, that's not a lot of people do that, right? I mean, a lot of people still question if the things that they do are working or not working, or they don't know if it's going to work or not, but we never know if anything will work or not. That's why we just go with the flow, and then we just figure it out along the way. So thank you so much for that. And, if our listeners want to get to know a little bit more about you and what you do, is there any social media profiles or links we want to connect with?
The easiest way to get in touch with me is to just go to my website, which is just amystarrallen.com. That's Star with 2 R's. And then you can connect to all my social media from there. But my username on all my social media is just my name, Amy Starr Allen. So I'm easy to find.
Awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that, Amy. And to our listeners, if you want to connect with Amy, you can also head on over to thetaoofselfconfidence.com and search for Amy's name. Her show notes will pop up along with everything else we talked about. And I really want to thank Amy for taking the time to share her story and journey with us. So thank you so much, Amy.
You're so welcome. It's my pleasure.
Awesome. And listeners, be on the lookout for another new episode of another amazing woman's journey to self-confidence. And we'll catch you later. Bye for now. Thank you for connecting with us on the Tao of Self-Confidence. Visit thetaoofselfconfidence.com for links to everything we chatted about, as well as killer resources, gifts, and so much more.